Good evening, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live at Jonny Lipsham Studios. Hope everyone's had a good week. I've had a very, very, very busy week. I have been here, there, everywhere, and I've been all over the place this week. And it's been very, very busy. I've been working some very, very long hours. So I am pretty bushed. So, hang on just one second. My computer's telling me I need to update, which I don't want to do. So, there we go. It's my laptop. My laptop was telling me that it needed to update, so I have just postponed it until tomorrow. So there we go. All right, folks. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by my laptop, hope everyone has had a great week. As I say, have had a busy time. I'm just scrolling up to the top of the chat. Ken was the first in the door. Basically, he popped in to say that he was going to a show. Going to see Alan Parsons. Awesome. Well, I hope you have a great time, Ken. And please do get in touch. Let me know how it went. Hope it's a good show, and hope you enjoy catching the replay of this one as well. So who do we have here? We got Dwayne. We got Kyle, and Thomas, and scroll down again. Mike from Peace Valley Audio is here. And that is all we have in the chat right now. Oh, RJ is here, RJ Hagler, which is awesome. I'm glad you are here. The only person we are missing really is somebody like Bobby Booth. Now, we've got 10 people in here tonight, so it could be a small crowd, which means we could do a shorter show. We will have to see. I know that my good friend Dave Vignola from Home Recording Made Easy is doing a coaching call with, no, it's not a coaching call tonight. He's doing some live mixing on his channel tonight. So he's doing that right now. So some of you may well be hopping between the two, which is fine. I don't mind you guys doing that. Providing that, kind of this show is just as valuable to you as Dave's show is. So I think that is going to be it for low numbers by the look of it. It looks like only 10 people. We would normally get twice as much as that by now. His Royal Facious Nurse is here, my good friend Face. He says, Alan Parsons Project of Eye in the Sky fame. I think that's what he's talking about. And that would be correct, I think. So, yes. So tonight's show is going to be all about arranging and making sure that you have a really good arrangement. Because it's not just about the song. The song has to be good. In fact, the song has to be great to create a piece of music that is going to be worth something to somebody, is going to be of value to somebody. So we're talking about arranging because having a good arrangement can make or break a song, even if the song is really good. If the song is really good but the arrangement sucks, it will kill the song. Trust me, I have seen that happen where folks have written a really, really great song, but the way they've arranged it just wrecks the song. It might well be that they've got like additional melodies or counter melodies that are just too busy, or they're not appropriate, or they sound out of place, or there's no, there's lack lack of sense to the structure and the form of the song. Like it maybe goes through too many sections, or it's, maybe it has a section where it has a pulse, and then the next section or the bit between the sections doesn't, and it just kind of pauses, and then it goes on into the next bit. That can be fine, but if you're doing that all the time, those kind of devices can actually just get annoying. And it can break your song, even if the lyrical content and the story of the song and the characters in it are really, really good. And even if the melody is fantastic and the vocal performance is really good, if the arrangement doesn't work, it will kill the song. In fact, there are numerous pop songs out there in pop history where you think that should be a hit. Why isn't that not a hit? Why is the public not liked this song or gelled with this song? And usually it's because the arrangement sucks. It's because the arrangement doesn't make sense to the listener. So the listener the listener just gets distracted, or they lose focus, or they lose interest. So your job as a producer, as a songwriter, your job really is to write something, arrange the song in such a way that it is completely compelling and engaging from the start to the end. I'm trying to think of some of the biggest hit songs that there have ever been. Some of Elvis's songs, for example. Not only were Elvis's songs extremely fine performances of an extremely fine performer and singer, but they were well arranged. The songs were well arranged in a way that was really engaging, to the point where people were phoning in the radio stations to say, hey, play it again, play the song again, play the song again, play the song again. And, when a song is successful when people start requesting the song to be played again. Or, if it's something that you listen to when you go to a record store, or you're looking online and you're listening to the previews of the song, and you're going, oh, I got to listen to that preview again. That song has grabbed you, and you are most likely to make a purchase. And that is what makes a song successful. Not just a great performance, not just a great lyric, not just a great melody, not just a great performance by the band, or even a great mix. It's a good arrangement that can make or break a song. So that is the subject for tonight, and we're gonna take apart one of my songs, and we're gonna see whether the arrangement that I have done of this particular song works and is effective and is able to keep the listener engaged and interested. So let's see, who have we got in the chat just now? RJ says, yes, saw the note for that other live stream happening just now. Yes. And some arrangements have saved many a crappy tune, but not by much. Yes, that is very true. Face, that is absolutely true. Kev's Crazy Life says, hey Johnny, Kev, I think you're new to my show. I don't think I've seen your name before. But thank you very much for coming and joining us. And feel free to ask your questions about the whole music production process, from writing a song, arranging it, recording it, mixing it, mastering it, getting your work out there to the world for people to listen to. Basically, I cover everything from start to finish on this channel. And in this live stream, you're free and able to ask questions on any aspect of that process. So thank you very much for coming. Mike says, I'm pretty sure my arrangements suck. Well, actually, no, they don't. I disagree with that. But learning to arrange your songs, and make a good arrangement is not easy. It takes a lot of practice to master it. Now, I had the privilege of being a high school music teacher for a couple of years, and in those 2 years, I got to listen to a lot of student compositions, and the biggest weakness that they have is the arrangement. It's not just kind of like, them having learned form and structure, which they will have learned in the classes because I teach those things. I teach form and structure. I teach AABA and ABA and rondo form, ternary form, all of that, sonata form. I taught all of those things, and then it was a case of then the students composing their own music using those tools, using those form and structure tools. And sometimes I would have a student who'd written something that had a really, really nice melody, but it was let down by other elements, like maybe the chord changes didn't make sense, didn't kind of sit very well with the melody, or they were let down by the fact that the melody was very exposed because there wasn't really a whole lot going on to support it, or there was not a counter melody. Even some of the best songs, like if you listen to anything by the Beatles, you'll notice that not only is there a good, strong lead vocal, but there are lots of other elements that go to make the song really engaging and really interesting. There's a counter melody. There are harmonies, vocal harmonies. There's little lead guitar figures. There's a little bass figure that pops up every now and then. There's a tasty drum fill that leads into the next section of the song. All of those things add up to making a song engaging and compelling. So getting the arrangement right and then having that arrangement well rehearsed before you even get into the studio to start recording is key and can totally make or break your song. Even if your song is really good, you could totally destroy it by a poor performance of a not very well thought through arrangement. So that's kind of the point that I'm aiming at. Let's see. Kev says, this is my first, but you've chatted with me on Facebook under my full name. Oh, cool. Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I hope you find all of this helpful. So let's dive into this, because we're now about 15 minutes into the show, and I don't want to lose a moment of this. So let's go and take a look at Studio One, and we can have a look at this song together. Now, I know, to those of you that are new to my show, this might seem a little bit narcissistic and self-serving that we're using one of my songs. But the reason why we're using one of my songs is because if I was to use somebody else's, I could get demonetized for this show, or I could get a copyright strike. So I have to be very careful about what I use. And for the most part, that is the reason why I use my own stuff, because I know I'm not going to get demonetized for using my own songs, and I'm not going to get a copyright strike because I own the copyrights. So we're all good from that point of view. All right, so let's take a look at this song. We're not really interested in the mix, particularly, so we can close the mixer. We're interested in what is going on over here in this song. What is going to make this song compelling for the listener? Okay, that's cool, Face. Excellent points. I'll get to that in just a second. All right, so let's take this from the top. And I've used the arranger track to kind of mark out all the sections of this song. And I can zoom in just a little bit as well, to make it a little bit easier to follow. So we have a double intro. We have a long intro, actually. It's 16 bars long. Most intros tend to be quite short. This one was quite long, and it's long for a reason. But you really have to, if you're going to do a long intro, you have to be able to justify it, and justify it well. And you need to, because this section here is going to be like the first 30 seconds of the song. This is where you will either keep or lose the listener. Okay, it doesn't matter what comes after it. This first section here is your selling point for your song. Get this right, then you will keep your listener going into your verse. If this doesn't work, or if this doesn't sound interesting to the listener, they will move on. they will skip your song and they'll go to another song entirely, either another one on your record, or they will just go to a completely different artist altogether, which is probably not what you want, really. So this section is of paramount importance. So how well you start your song is really crucial, but also how you end it is just as important, because you want to leave the listener either wanting more or satisfied with the conclusion. So if you're going to leave them wanting more, then if you're going to use something like a fade out, you need to be able to do it with clear intention, that it's not lazy. All too often, there are songs out there in the world and on records that you will have listened to where pretty much every song on the record has a fade out. Now, here's the problem I personally have with fade outs, is that they tend to be quite lazy. It's just like, oh, we couldn't think of an ending for the song, so what we'll do is we'll just repeat the last, we'll repeat the last 4 bars of the chorus, and we'll have the vocalist ad-libbing over those chord changes, and the band will just keep playing until we fade it out. Well, to me, it's not always, but quite often, that's just lazy, because you couldn't think of a way to end the song in an engaging way, and in a satisfying way. So if you're going to do a fade out, do it with some kind of intent. And oftentimes the best way that I have heard a good fade out at the end of a song being done is when maybe you have a guitar solo on the out chorus at the end of the song. Because what you can do is, if you pick the point where you start the fade out perfectly, like at the apex of the solo, you can leave the listener wanting more of that guitar solo, because they'll start to get engaged with that guitar solo as you're starting to fade out. And that's where you leave the listener wanting more. And that is where a good fade out will work. So that in itself is an arranging, it's a production technique, but it's also an arranging technique. Get a good soloist at the end of your song, whether that's a guitar or a saxophone or a trumpet or a flugelhorn or whatever it might be for your song. Get a good solo at the end of your song that starts to soar, and the minute that soloist starts to really rev up and go for it, that's where you start your fade out. So that you leave the listener kind of wanting to turn it up so that they can counteract your fade, so they can hear what comes next after the fade. So, and that is, if you've got the listener doing that, you've got them, you've hooked them. So start and end, absolutely crucial. Next thing that's really, really important is how you set up into the first verse where your vocal comes in. Get this right, and the listener will start to engage with the first line of your verse. Or if you're starting your song with the chorus, the first line of the chorus. So this is really important to get this right. So here's what I did with this song, and you may or may not be familiar with it. If you're familiar with this song, it's called Belonging to Tomorrow. It's the title track off my 2016 EP, and this is my band. And this is actually using the mock-ups of the horns that I wrote, and this is using the Presence XT horns. I did replace these on the final track with real musicians, but for what we're seeing here, this is my mock-up. All right, so we've got live drums, and we got mostly live elements apart from the mock-up horns. These, as I say, got replaced later in the day. But let's have a listen just to this intro bit going into the first line of the first verse.
that letter I know I'll never send, when all habitual dalliance will finally end.
Alright, so the intro is quite lengthy. But I've got some contrasting elements going on here that will hopefully draw the listener in. I've introduced the horn section really, really early because they provide colour and texture, and as well as counter melody going throughout the rest of the tune. So I wanted to set the listener up, get them familiar with this sound of the muted trumpet, the flugelhorn, and the flute. But we also have this little tenor sax obbligato that only actually appears once in the entire song, as you can see. This is just like two little phrases, and then that's it. It's gone. You don't hear it again. I guess I could have brought it back at the very end, the little play out at the end, but I didn't. I just kept it just at the beginning, and so this sets you up nice. It gives you the mood of the song. It's kind of dark, it's spacious, and it's full of tension, which sets you up nicely for the whole point of the song. The whole point of this song is to explore tension within the individual who is the narrator of the song here. His battle is with procrastination, putting things off, and he's facing some big decisions that he doesn't want to have to deal with, but he's got to deal with them. And so he's in that place where he keeps putting things off, and it's become a habit for him. He keeps putting things off, but he wishes he didn't, and he hates it when he does, but he keeps doing it, and it's a habitual cycle. But in this particular case, he's doing it with some pretty big decisions. So what I've done throughout the song is I've increased the tension by going up a half step for the second verse. So the first verse is in G, the second verse is in A flat, and then the third and final verse is in B flat. To really ratchet up the tension, I decided not to go up another half step. I decided to go a whole step instead, just to kind of really ratchet up the tension with this guy and his issue with procrastination. Kev says, so intros are really 3 to 5 bars long. Yes, usually they are short, but they don't have to be. But if you're going to do a long intro, you have to be able to justify it. As with anything in your song, ask yourself why. Why am I doing this? What is the point? How does it serve the song? How does it get my listener engaged with the lyric, which is the important thing? How do I get the listener engaged with the vocal, with the words of the song? Because that's what it's all about. And so for me, this is part of the setup. I'm setting up the mood, I'm setting up the atmosphere, but I'm also getting the listener familiar with this little sound here. If we go back to it, we can just solo these up. All right, so I wanted to set the listener up with this kind of close-voiced, semitones apart sound, to basically immediately convey to the listener, this is tense, and this individual in this song is brittle. He's kind of at his wit's end. So that's why I chose these particular instruments. The muted trumpet, because the muted trumpet is brittle. And then the flute. The flute can be warm, but it can also juxtapose nicely with the brittleness and the harshness of the muted trumpet. And then the flugelhorn is another brass instrument, but being that it's not muted, it provides a little bit of low end that just these two on their own, it would sound a bit weird. Now, I could have got away with that without the flugelhorn, but the flugelhorn just provides a little bit of low end and a little bit of a more open tone to kind of go with it. So it's complementary. And then the horns kind of expand out. We get another tenor sax in here as well as we go through the song. And they kind of they get more and more busy as the song goes on. So having just done this intro, they are not in the whole of the first verse, but they take part in this little vamp before you get into the next verse. And then I bring back some familiar figures in the middle of the second verse, and then going into a restating of this kind of intro mood on the back end of the flugelhorn solo. Believe it or not, this solo here is a distorted flugelhorn played through a wah-wah pedal. So the guy on recording day was playing through a guitarist distortion pedal and a wah-wah pedal, and we captured that. And it sounds crazy. It sounds really, really good. But the wah-wah pedal that we had just I don't know, maybe it had a dodgy contact or something, but it crackled rather a lot, which ruined the take. So what we did was we just took the wah-wah pedal out and he just played just distortion, but I really liked the wah-wah pedal. So what I did was I ended up, as you can see here, automating the wah-wah pedal in Ampere with my fader port to try and replicate what he had done. And it sounds amazing, as you'll hear when we get into that part. I'm just going to go back and look at the chat. Mika is here. Good to see you. He says procrastinators are adrenaline junkies. Yes, they are. I am one of those. He says, isn't what you were discussing about the first few seconds of a tune only part of the increasing levels of the range of attention deficit disorders? Shouldn't we be inculcating attentiveness? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, attentiveness is very important. I'm not just talking about attention deficit, which to some degree or other we all have, but you're right, it is about attentiveness as well. Absolutely. So, you need to keep your listener completely engaged and attentive to what's going on in your song. So that's important. So we've kind of gone over this intro. And the one bit I didn't talk about was the solo saxophone here. And he comes in again at the end here, because he's answering these horns. So this guy is kind of like answering the horn section figures here, and then we get into the verse. Okay, so each verse, as I say, goes up a half step. But we've got some horn figures that go on in between. And the reason why they're there is partly to lead the listener into the next key, and partly also to kind of fill the gap a little bit. Because if I was to play this section without the horns, it would sound just a little bit empty, really. Tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow. Soon I'll make that journey. So I could have done it like that and just left it empty, but to me it kind of, this little vamp here was a moment for me where I thought I could lose the listener if I don't do something here, which is why we did this. Tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow. So kind of in the same way that this passage here kind of heralds and announces the start of the first verse, I wanted this little bit here to do the same for the second. Now, it sounds a little bit like a fanfare, and that is kind of a little bit deliberate, because the next thing he talks about an imagined journey. Soon I'll make that journey down to Paradise Falls. And he's talking about running away. Soon I'll make that journey. Soon I'll just run away from it all. And so I thought, let's herald this with a little kind of jokey fanfare. Because this guy really is a little bit of a loser. And then I use the horn section to kind of interrupt him as he goes on. So let's pick it up from the start of this verse.
Soon I'll make that journey out to Paradise Falls, and on all the stifling lethargy, time will now be called. Then Christless, the snake-eyed schmo, take a henna down, you will go along.
Okay, so what we're doing here is we're using the horn section to provide some counter melody, because the first verse was quite bare and quite empty, and so I wanted to kind of fill things up a little bit, and also to help kind of ratchet up the tension progressively as we go through this song. So as you can see, the horns get more involved in the song as we go through it, which is a great way actually to provide contrast for your listeners, is between lots going on and then very little going on. And I'm going to get to the ending where actually that becomes really quite dramatic in this song. So we'll get to that in just a second. Now, when we did the first chorus, it's not really a chorus. It's kind of like a refrain, I suppose, just like a repeated line. In the first verse, there's nothing going on here.
My friend and foe, to oblivion you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow.
But this time in the second verse, we get this.
Go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow.
Now, this is important, this bit here, the setup for the solo. Now, if the listener is starting to doze off a little bit, this drum solo here should wake them up a bit and set them up for a surprise, which is a sound that they have not heard yet, which is this crazy distorted wah-wah'd flugelhorn, which was actually an idea that my lead trumpet player, Luke Richards, came up with. Because he's always experimenting with different sounds that he can get out of his trumpet. And he has a pedal board that is actually bigger than my guitar player's pedal board. It's got loads of stuff on it. He's got reverbs, he's got delays, he's got wah-wah pedals, he's got distortions, he's got all sorts of things on his pedal board. And he's got a looper as well, which is great fun. For live shows, because basically when the rest of the band go off the stage, he'll just do his own little, 5-10 minute thing just with him and his flugelhorn or his trumpet, and the looper, and it's amazing. But anyway, that's a subject for another day. Mika says, I think that the grab me in the first 20 seconds idea is nothing but corporate shilling. Yeah, I think you might have a point. To shift product, if you see your product solely as commodity, fine. As a creative endeavor, well, yes. Yeah, I do see your point. I think to a degree, I agree with you. But I don't agree with you entirely. I think it's just generally relatively true in this day and age that if you want to sell your music, if you want to make money from your music, then you need to engage your listener from the very, very start of the song. Otherwise, they will skip. That's just a fact. It's, you may well say, hey, you're just stating your own opinion, but it really is kind of a fact. And even back in the old days when we didn't have MP3s and we didn't have CDs, you would still skip. If you went into the record store and you were at one of those listening stations, you'd still move on to the next thing. You wouldn't just stand there and listen to something that you're just not engaged with. If it's not grabbed you in the first sort of 30 or 40 seconds max, I'm not going to listen to it. If I don't like the sound of it, if I'm not engaged with the song, if I think, this sounds just a bit flat, a bit empty, there's just nothing going on, there's just nothing that grabs me here, I move on to the next thing. I don't buy that person's record. And then that person loses out on my sale. So, for as much as we're talking about being creative here, if you're a hobbyist and you're not really interested in selling your music and you just want to put your music out there for people to listen to, that's fine. And you're putting it out there for free, that's fine. You're not expecting to make money out of it, that's okay. Then, some of this may well not apply to you 100%. Grabbing them in the first 20, 30 seconds may well not be something that's important to you. But, if you're wanting to actually sell your music and make some money out of it, even if it's money to be made on the side to pay for a holiday or, to put down for a deposit for a house or to help with purchase of a new car or something like that, then, making sure you have your listener engaged up front is important, I think, because that's how you grab their attention and that's how you grab their wallet, so to speak. That's my view, anyway. Mika says, very interesting harmonies, both instrumentally and vocally, very cool. I want to hear the whole thing. Well, we're certainly going to do that, don't worry. But you've made a really good point, actually, on harmonies. I can go and take you through those. Let's just solo up. The BV's just going into this little chorus thing. It's really too short to be a chorus. I don't know. Is it a chorus? I don't know. To me, it's just kind of like a refrain that comes up like 3 times. But it's not really a chorus, I don't think. It's not long enough to be a chorus. Maybe it is. Well, if you've got an opinion on whether this is a chorus or not, put it in the chat. If you think this is a chorus, then say, yes, I think this is a chorus. If you don't, then say, no, I think it's a refrain or something like that. I don't know what the technical term would be for this. Anyway, here are the backing vocal harmonies.
Longing to tomorrow, longing to tomorrow.
All right, if I put the lead vocal in there as well.
We'll go belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow.
There you go, and you can hear lots of foot movements at the end of that as well. Let's see. Carl says we no longer have to walk over and lift the tone arm. Yes, you're absolutely right. Face says, Mika, if you're willing to make the assumption that people actually want to hear your music, that's fine. But sometimes you have to get the average listener interested, whether you're trying to sell your music or just get them to listen. Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think you're quite right. Mika says, that's where the inculcation of ADD and its ranges come into play. I get that we want to make money. I was just stimulating some convo regarding this. Well, that's cool. That's what this show is all about. This show is all about talking. It's not just about me talking to you. It's about you guys talking to me because, I learn as much as you guys. I'll be honest. You guys inform me. You guys teach me as much as I'm doing any teaching here. And that's, to be honest, that's the point of Sunday Night Live, is that we learn together, we grow together. and we encourage each other, and we stimulate interesting conversation. We stimulate one another's thinking, as iron sharpens iron. That's the way I see my Sunday Night Live show. So there you go. That's the BVs, and as it goes up a step, they actually get harder to sing. To be honest, have a listen to the same thing in A flat.
Belonging to tomorrow. Belonging to tomorrow.
Yeah, if you thought that was tough, let's listen to them up a whole step from there.
You will go. Belonging to tomorrow. Belonging to tomorrow.
Yeah, so the vocals let's take out the lead vocals here. And you can hear that the harmonies actually get closer.
Longing to tomorrow. Longing to tomorrow.
Yeah, so when you add everything else in, it does kind of sound a little bit strange, a little bit interesting. Okay, so let's kind of rev up into this solo section, because you guys haven't really heard that part yet. But that was a useful and important point that you made there about the backing vocals and the harmonies and everything, because they're actually really important as well, because the backing vocals are not just emphasizing the belonging to tomorrow, which is what procrastination literally means. Procrastination is a Latin word, and when you transliterate it into English, it means literally to belong to the next day, belonging to tomorrow, which is essentially what procrastination is. I put something off to tomorrow, therefore it belongs to tomorrow. And that's where kind of like the whole title for this song came from. Belonging to tomorrow, I'm putting this off, I'm putting this off. And it's kind of like the three verses are three instances where you're putting something off and you're making it belong to tomorrow. So not only are we hammering that concept home with the backing vocals, we're doing it with some close and unusual harmonies that the listener's just not expecting. And that is part of reinforcing the sense of tension about this whole situation, which is why the backing vocals are nice and close up and a little bit dissonant in places. So it's a really, to me, backing vocals are really important because they provide just a really important role in supporting the punchline of your song. Backing vocals are great because you can kind of have oohs and ahs, you can create texture that way. And I do that in some of my other songs. I have, long sections where it's wordless and I'm using the voices like a saxophone section in a big band. And I do that quite a lot. That's kind of like my signature style, if you like, with backing vocals, is I try to make them rhythmical but tight, so the voices are all moving together really closely, and then the voicings are a little bit more kind of like saxophone section-like, which is kind of what I've gone for here, but I made the voicings hard to sing deliberately. And these were hard to sing. All of these voices, by the way, are me. If you want to really kind of hear what I can do with my voice, have a listen to this part on its own.
Longing to tomorrow. Longing to tomorrow.
There you go. And that really isn't as high as I can go. I can go much higher than that. I could probably go a major sixth above that note. But there you go. That's my crazy backing vocals. But yeah, that's the whole point of backing vocals. So kind of use them carefully and have a point, have a reason for them. Have the backing vocals there, not because you think you should have backing vocals because songs have them. be strategic about them. What point are they going to serve? Are they going to highlight a particular important point of your lyric that you want to hammer home? That's, for me, that's the real role of backing vocals in a song. Yes, they can provide an extra texture and a different color that you don't otherwise have, but you can also have them to reinforce a point, which is what this is. It's reinforcing a point. All right, so the drum solo. The drum solo is there for one reason and one reason only, and that is to set up for the sound that you've not yet heard, which is the distorted wah-wah flugelhorn. And also, I wanted something, again, different that hadn't happened before. Because this is another pickup point for the listener's ear. If the listener's ear is starting to drop off here, if it's to draw a line of kind of interest, it would maybe start up here and then start to drift. Now this would be where, hang on, we've not heard this before, and hopefully it goes back up. This sounds interesting. And then maybe, because we're restating the intro, we're bringing the dynamic range down, the texture thins out. Just maybe this bit, it might start to drop off again. But hopefully we're setting up into the final verse, so it goes up another key. And that hopefully picks the listener back up again for this final verse. More horns being involved here, and then the ending's really quite interesting. So let's just get this solo out the way, and you can hear what this does. Okay, I'm going to stop here just for a second, because there's something that you may or may not have noticed, which is important to this whole concept of arranging. I'm going to take you back to, is it this verse? Or is it here? No, it's here. To this little fanfare-y kind of thing going into the second verse. Listen to this. Okay, and then listen to this.
Belonging to tomorrow.
See, a little bit of repetition, which is what we've done here. We brought that little fanfare figure back again. And I brought it back because it kind of gives something for the listener to go, oh, I've heard that before. It gives them just another little hook, another little anchor point within the song. So if they were starting to flag here, maybe, I'm not saying they are, but, if they were, then this would be like, aha, I've heard this little figure before. It came up before we went into the next verse. Maybe we're going into another verse. And maybe the listener's going, I hope we're not going into another verse. This song's been long enough already. But no, actually, we go into another flugelhorn solo. and we're taking the tempo, well, we're not taking the tempo down, we're taking the dynamic range down, and we're taking some of the heat out of this song as we head into the ending section here. And there you have it, folks. That's pretty much the whole song in a nutshell. Now, at this end, this out vamp here, the horns, they take on a completely different role. So now they're kind of just providing some extra color and texture. That's all they're doing to back up this flugelhorn solo. I did originally have no horns here at all, and it was just going to be rhythm section and just the open flugelhorn without the distortion and the wah-wah pedal. But it sounded actually just a little bit too empty. You know, the contrast was a little bit too big for my liking. And so I just came up with this little simple stab figure that everybody could just play repeatedly. And then we've got this little flute solo at the end, which doesn't occur anywhere else in the song. It's just at the end all on its own. And again, it's just kind of, and the fact the chords ascend by semitones, they're kind of going up in semitones with the bass staying on its G note. Again, it just kind of like reminds you of the tension of the song and what we're talking about, that this is all about procrastination and the tension that provides. So that kind of like gives you a little bit of a conclusion there. So get the ending right, get the start right, and provide some interest along the way. You can do that with automation. You can do that with, counter melodies, which is kind of what we got in the second and third verses here. You can do that between sections with a little vamp and a little motif that takes you into that next verse, which you can use repeatedly in between each verse if you want to. So that the listener's always got something that they're being brought back to. And you can do that you can also do that with lead guitar figures. You can do that with any element that you so wish. I mean, it doesn't have to be a little kind of 4-piece horn section like I've got here. It could be whatever you want. It could be a string quartet. It could be, I don't know, it could be 4 alpenhorns. Whatever takes your fancy. All right, now, that took a lot longer than I intended, and I apologize for that, but I will run over for a while. So if you've got questions, you can still get them in just now, and we'll do that for a bit. We'll do a few questions, and then we'll end the show maybe in about another 20 minutes. So I'm happy to run over by about 20 minutes or so. Don't mind. I will probably reap the repercussions of that tomorrow morning, but hey, it's coming up on 1 o'clock in the morning here. So let's go and have a look. John Lake is here. Hey John, good to see you, mate. And he says, I finally made it here. You guys didn't give the ultimate answer to the ultimate question while I was gone. Yeah, I think the answer to that is 42, and I think somebody else already beat me to that. Kyle says, sounds very similar to a horn mute. Yes, it is. It's the flugelhorn solo it's not actually muted, but it's running through a distortion pedal and a wah-wah pedal. And yes, you're kind of right. my inspiration, or I think Luke's inspiration for this, because it was his idea. His inspiration for it was the trumpet player with the Duke Ellington band, a guy called Bubba Miley, who used to play with either his hand over the bell of the trumpet, and so he would have his hand over it and kind of get this kind of darker, more muffled tone compared to the open tone, and he would like create a wow effect by doing that. But then he would also take a sink plunger and take the wood stick out the plunger and just use the rubber plunger, and he would use that as well, or he would use a hat is another way to achieve that effect. And he did it quite famously on a tune called East St. Louis Toodaloo by Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn. And he was the featured soloist for this particular song. And he did that, I think he did that with a plunger, alternating open and closed on the bell of the instrument. Famously, that song was covered by Steely Dan on their 1972 album Can't Buy a Thrill, where the wah-wah trumpet part, originally played by Bubba Miley, as I said, was played by Walter Becker, I think. Or, no, it was played by Steve Kahn, playing just an ordinary... He was just playing the guitar part, and then they used a talk box after the fact to create the wah-wah effect, and I think Walter Becker did that part. He did the talk box. He had to learn the guitar part to do the talk box effect on it, and it's very, very, very effective version of that tune. Let's see. John says, are these real horns? Not in what you're listening to tonight. What you're listening to tonight is the mock-ups that I did. They were replaced by real instruments for the final recording. So what you're listening to is my rhythm section with the horn mock-ups, which are all done in Presence XT. So yeah, they're pretty good actually. The horn sounds you get in Presence XT are pretty good. You just have to know how to make them sound realistic. So it helps if you're familiar with how trumpet players and sax players and flute players play their instruments, and when they need to breathe and all that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with that kind of thing, then you can make them sound pretty good. Let's see. Face says, very nice composition with excellent development and related themes. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say so. I appreciate that. Mika says, sometimes I play a part of a film soundtrack I'll be working on, suddenly realizing that I'm hearing not much more than a drone or a pulse with a distant complex sound, ambient, really boring, until you put it up with the film, and it changes the perspective entirely. Yeah. Engaging a different sense along with what you're listening to can certainly change the perspective of what you're listening to. It's like listening to a horror soundtrack on its own, without the dialogue and without the sound effects, and you're thinking, yeah, what's this all about? What is this all about? And it sounds vaguely tense, maybe, or a bit dark, but what's really going on? And there's maybe a bit of disconnection. But when you listen to that in the context of watching the film, and you're engaging your other senses, then the two marry up, and suddenly the music. I think John Williams says about film scoring that he likes to be an extra character in the film. Or, he will take aspects of the characters in the films and develop thematic material for those characters. So when those characters are on screen, you hear their melodic motif or harmonic motif or something like that, constantly being hinted at or referred to. And you get that a lot in the Star Wars films, the original trilogy of Star Wars films. You get that a lot, where each character has their own particular piece of melody. And, you know, things like the Imperial March. The Imperial March kind of like you immediately think, oh, that's Darth Vader and the dark side and all of that. But if you listen carefully, whenever Luke is on screen, not only do you hear Luke's theme, which is played by a French horn, a solo French horn, but you often get, maybe 3 or 4 flutes in harmony playing a section of the Imperial March. So that, you know, you kind of get the idea that Luke is wanting desperately to be a Jedi, but, you know, there is this kind of dark side connection. And if you're really clever, from the music alone, you figure out that Darth Vader is Luke's dad, you know. That's a clever little device that he uses. And, you know, there's other film composers that do the same. You know, people like Hans Zimmer, for example. He kind of does those kind of things as well. I think we're at the bottom of the chat. I don't think there are any questions, as far as I can see. No questions. Everybody happy with what we talked about? So, you know, we don't need to do any Q&A. I think I answered everyone else's questions. John says, horns sound great to me. Thumbs up. Thank you very much, mate. Yes, they actually sound better on the original, on the final record. If you are interested in going to check that out, you can do. If you go to my Facebook page, if you're on Facebook, there's a direct link to it there on my profile page. Otherwise, you can go to Nimbit Music, NIMBIT music.com/Jonny Lipsham, and that'll take you to my Nimbit profile. And when you're on my Nimbit profile, you will find all of my music that I've released there. And I've got my Belonging to Tomorrow EP. I've got a couple of other individual single releases there as well. So go and check those out if you're interested in that kind of thing. Mika says, which type of wah-wah do you have selected for that guitar solo? There's no guitar solo in this song. There is a flute. It's not a guitar, it's a flugelhorn. Let's see. Let's go and solo this guy up. Yeah, so it's not a guitar. That's a flugelhorn played through, I think it was a Boss distortion pedal, which we cranked quite a bit, and then there's delay on there, and then there's the wah-wah pedal. I forget what the wah-wah pedal was. I have a feeling the wah-wah pedal was a crybaby, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's a flugelhorn and not a guitar. I think if memory serves, my original intention was for it to be a guitar solo. I wanted a crazy guitar solo here, originally, I think. And then trying to remember why I ended up with a flugelhorn solo instead. Oh, I know why. I know why I ended up with a flugelhorn solo here instead of a guitar, which is what I originally wanted. My guitar soloist that I had hired to come and do this, solo, had bailed on me at the last minute. Well, not bailed on me. He'd been forced to cancel, and so couldn't make the session. But Luke was already here because he's a good friend of mine, and he was just hanging around in the studio with me anyway. And I said, we've not got a guitar solo. What are we going to do? And he said, well, I could kind of do the same kind of thing that you want, the same idea that you have in your head, but do it with the flugelhorn. So that's what we did. This was a one-take thing. I just basically put up a mic and he ran the mic through his pedal board and then back into my interface, and we hit record. And this what you hear is what he played pretty much. No editing. He did it all in one take. And then the other solo, the open one at the end, which doesn't have the wah-wah and all of that on it. That's got a bit of delay and a bit of reverb on it, but that's all that's got on it. And he did that later. We just I wasn't sure what to put on at the end here, to be honest. I think originally was going to go for maybe vocal ad-libs and then changed my mind. And I called Luke in and said, can you play something at the end here? And he did. So he's the kind of guy that can do things in one take. He says, very interesting sound, creative. Yeah, it was totally improvised. Not just his playing, but the whole idea was kind of it was circumstance threw up a situation, and I needed to fix that. I suddenly was without a guitar soloist, and I didn't know what to do, and Luke came up with this creative idea. Why don't we just do the same thing but with a flugelhorn instead of a guitar? And he said, I can make it sound relatively guitar-like. And so he did, and we came up, and what he played just sounded totally awesome, and with the wah-wah as well. And as I say, the original wah-wah didn't cut. It didn't work. It crackled a lot. So I used the Empire wah-wah pedal thing, and I just used the fader on my fader port to move it up and down, basically. So this was me. I had to learn his solo to do this, to make it work, because his original wah-wah pedal just crackled, and it kind of ruined an otherwise really good performance. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, I did say I used the wah from Empire. That's right. That's what it was. But originally, when he did the original recording, he used his own wah-wah, and it crackled. And I didn't like the fact that it crackled, so I redid it myself using the wah-wah in Empire. So there you go. And that is that with that song. Any other questions? Given that we are now at about 10 past. Happy to go on for another few minutes. Mika says, which type of Empire wah-wah do you have selected for that, for the solo? Oh, good question. I need to go find that. Hang on. Bear with me a minute. I need to go and check what that was. Where's my flugelhorn solo? Let's open her up. Okay, you're not seeing any of this. All right, so this is what we have. It's just this guy here. At the bottom of the Empire plugin, you have all of these stomp boxes, and I've got the reverb on, and I've got the wah-wah, and a little bit of overdrive, and everything else is flat apart from the gain is tilted a little bit, and then we've got it going through red light distortion as well, just for extra added crunch. So there you go. Sounds great, in my opinion. Confused now. Did you record the flugel dry? No, we recorded it with a distortion pedal and his original wah-wah, which, as I say, didn't work. So it didn't sound right. So we did it again without the wah-wah, and then I automated the wah-wah in Empire to create the same effect. So it wasn't dry. Click on the word cry. Oh, yes. Yes, that's true. That's a point. You actually, I think you get some options there, don't you? Yeah, you do. Yeah. But yes, I use the cry, which would be, I guess, the Crybaby Wawa. But I don't remember what his wah-wah pedal is. That's my problem. I don't remember what his one was. I just went with what was default there. The Empire Strikes Back. Yep. There are different wah-wah models to choose. Yes, I just realized that. Yes. I just left it on the default Crybaby. Hang on, I got an itch in my ear. There we go. I just used the default Crybaby one. I could have used a different one, but I didn't. All right, so anything else? Re-recorded Flugel. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess is what we did. Yeah. So that I could do the wah-wah bit after the fact. Because there was something wrong with his wah-wah pedal. I can't remember what it was. Maybe the battery was going or something. I'm not sure. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we're going to be done for the night. Let's see. How many people do we actually have watching? Well, we've got 14 people in here now. 14's pretty good. Considering Dave is on over on Home Recording Made Easy. Doing his live mixing thing. So I hope this has been really helpful to you guys. Talking about arranging and arrangements and getting those aspects of your song right so that your listener is kept engaged all the way through the song. So I hope that this has all been helpful to you. If it has, hit the like button. I'd appreciate that. And if you are a subscriber, great. If you haven't hit the notification bell, though, hit that bell. Because that way you'll know when the next video or the next Sunday Night Live is, and you won't have to kind of try and remember when it's going to be. You'll get a notification. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. I would appreciate that too. Just to give you a little bit of update on the redevelopment of things here at Jonny Lipsham Studios. We are building a new website. It's going really well. It's looking really, really nice. I'm still working on it. VIP is going well. I'm getting the content ready for that as well over the course of these next 5 or 6 weeks. And we're looking to launch in the first week of November with the new website, the new branding, the new logos, everything, and the VIP. The doors will be open to VIPs in that first week. When I get a little bit closer to the time, so maybe like the second half of October, I'll actually be able to give you guys a specific date on which we go live and we launch everything. And I'll be doing a special live stream or two to celebrate the launch of everything. And then you'll be able to join the VIP. If you're on my email list, you guys will get a sneak peek of the VIP. And you'll get to see what it looks like and what the content is there. And I'm going to look into whether I can give you early bird access to it. So if you are on my email list and you're interested in that, then you will be able to get in on VIP before everybody else does. If you're not on my email list, go sign up today. There's a link in the description below. And when you sign up, you will get one of my other songs from this EP called Chanel. And you get the multi-track files for that. And you can practice your mixing skills on that. Or you can do a remix or whatever you want to do. Just, whatever you do with it, just make sure to credit me as the songwriter and the artist because it's my song. What else do you get? Oh, you also get a video series on compression. So if you aren't really sure what you're doing with compression yet, then that video series hopefully will be of help to you. I am going to be doing another compression series later this year, which goes into a few more advanced compression concepts and goes into a bit more detail. And that will be launched some point towards the end of November as well. So that will be something that you'll be able to purchase from my new store. Or if you are a VIP member, you will automatically get access to that. Because pretty much the VIP is you get access to everything. It's like the Slate Everything bundle, except it's all my stuff instead of his. So you get all of my stuff for 1 month, a monthly fee, basically. And as we go closer to the time, you'll get more details on that. All right, so I think we will end that there. And I will wish everybody a very pleasant evening, pleasant night, or pleasant morning, or pleasant afternoon, whatever time it is for you guys. Have a good one, and I will see you on Wednesday over at Jonny's channel. Hang on, I'm trying to do 3 things at once here and struggling. As usual. So Wednesday, over on Jonny's channel, the Home Studio Training channel for Songwriting Simplified. Should be a good show. I've yet to talk to Jonny, but I think we've got a very good idea of what we're doing for this week. So it should be very, very cool. So I will see you then. Good night. Good